In the late spring of 1978, the willow trees along the riverbank of our rural Chinese village swayed like mourners, their branches dipping into the churning waters that would change my life. I, Lily Adams, an educated youth sent to the countryside during the Cultural Revolution, stood at the edge of destiny, reborn with memories of a past life, a gift, or perhaps a curse, bestowed by the heavens. The village elders whispered of a karmic cycle, a celestial ledger balancing deeds across lifetimes, spoken of in hushed tones at the temple where incense curled toward the sky. In my previous life, I had drowned in betrayal. In this one, I was given a chance to rewrite my fate. The river incident was the fulcrum of both lives, a moment etched in my soul with the clarity of pain. It was a crisp morning, the air heavy with the scent of wet earth after a night of rain. The commune's production team had gathered near the stone bridge, repairing irrigation channels strained by the swollen river. Cindy Green, a fellow educated youth with a smile that masked ambition, and I were hauling baskets of gravel when a child's cry pierced the air. A boy, no older than 6, had slipped into the current, his small hands flailing. Without thinking, I dropped my basket and waded in, the icy water biting my skin. Cindy followed, her motives unclear, perhaps to help, possibly to shine in the eyes of others. The river was merciless, its undertow dragging us both under. I fought to reach the child, my lungs burning, but the current was a beast, tossing me like chaff. Through the chaos, I saw John Mitchell, my fiancé, sprinting along the bank. His eyes, sharp with panic, darted between Cindy and me. In my past life, he had chosen me, pulling me from the water while Cindy was left to a village thug's rescue, a choice that birthed tragedy. But in this life, as I choked on silt and despair, John's arms reached for Cindy, cradling her to safety. I was abandoned, my vision fading until rough hands yanked me to the shore. My savior was Dany, a man the village called a fool. His broad shoulders strained as he dragged me onto the grass, his simple face creased with worry. "Stay, miss, stay," he stammered, his voice thick with effort. I coughed, shivering, and the taste of river mud was bitter on my tongue. The crowd murmured, their stares a mix of pity and scorn. Holding Cindy wrapped in his coat, John didn't glance my way. My heart, already scarred from a lifetime of his betrayal, cracked anew. Yet as I lay on the riverbank, Dany's calloused hand steadying me, a spark of resolve flickered. This life would not repeat the past. In my previous life, John's choice to save me led to our engagement, a union sealed by obligation. Cindy, rescued by a good-for-nothing named Dogface Wayne, married him in desperation. Her life unraveled. Wayne's cruelty drove her to throw herself into the same river that had nearly claimed us. Her death broke John, turning his love for me to ash. He grew cold, his heart a ledger of blame. After the economic reforms swept through China, he built a fortune but used it to destroy my family, framing my father for embezzlement. "You clung to me," he sneered then, "and Cindy died for it." My mother's eyes dimmed with grief. My unborn child never saw the light. That life ended in ruin, but this one offered redemption. The village, nestled in a valley where rice fields gleamed like jade, was a microcosm of post-reform China. The commune system was fraying, and whispers of private enterprise stirred the air. Yet tradition held firm, marriages were alliances, dowries a measure of worth. As an educated youth, I was admired and suspect, and my city roots were a mark of difference. Dany, a laborer who'd appeared after the 1975 flood, was an enigma, his slow speech and gentle demeanor earning him mockery. The river incident, though, bound us. As I sat in the commune dorm that night, my damp clothes clinging to me, I traced the karmic thread that had brought me back. The heavens had spared me, but for what? To drown in John's shadow again, or to forge a new path? Rachel Moore, my closest friend and a seamstress with a tongue as sharp as her needle, found me there. "Lily, you're pale as a ghost," she said, her eyes narrowing. "John left you to die. What now?" Her loyalty, forged through years of shared hardship, was my anchor. I looked at her, then at the lantern casting shadows on the wall. "Dany saved me," I said softly. "He's no schemer, Rachel. That may be enough." The words felt fragile, but carried a truth I couldn't yet name. The river had taken my old life. Now it offered a chance to build anew, with a man whose heart, however simple, had leaped into the water for me. The night after the river incident, I lay in my narrow cot in the commune dorm, the air thick with the scent of damp straw and kerosene. Moonlight slipped through the cracked window, painting silver streaks across the rough-hewn floor of our rural Chinese village, where the pulse of 1978 beat with both promise and restraint. My body ached from the river's icy grip, but my heart bore the deeper wounds, scars from a past life that haunted me like ghosts in the temple's shadow. Reborn through a karmic cycle the elders spoke of, I carried memories of betrayal, loss, and a family shattered by the man I once loved. John Mitchell's choice to save Cindy Green over me was not just a moment of abandonment, but a mirror reflecting my previous life's ruin. In that other life, John's decision to pull me from the river led to our engagement, a bond forged in duty rather than desire. Cindy, left to the mercy of Dogface Wayne, a village thug with a heart as rotten as spoiled grain, married him in despair. Her suicide, a plunge into the same river that nearly claimed us, broke something in John. He grew cold, his eyes like frost on a winter morn. When China's economic reforms opened doors, he seized them, building a trading business that glittered with wealth, but his success was a weapon. He framed my father, a humble clerk in the county office, for embezzlement, accusing him of siphoning commune funds. The trial was swift, the evidence fabricated. My father, his proud shoulders slumped, was led away in chains, his last words to me a whispered, "Be strong, Lily." My mother, once the village's best weaver, unraveled with him. Grief blinded her, her fingers too trembling to thread a needle. I cared for her. My dreams of a university education, of a life beyond the fields, were buried under her needs. Worst of all was the child I carried, John's child, lost to miscarriage as stress and despair consumed me. John's final visit to our crumbling home was a blade to my soul. "If you hadn't clung to the engagement so desperately," he sneered, his voice dripping with mockery, "Cindy wouldn't have died so miserably. What makes you think you deserve to live well?" Those words, sharp as the river's current, drowned me in guilt. My past life ended not in death, but in a living death, each day a struggle to breathe under the weight of his vengeance. Now, reborn, I faced a choice. The river incident had exposed John's heart. He chose Cindy, as he always would. Yet the pain of his betrayal was not just for the moment he left me to drown. It was for the years he spent destroying me, blaming me for a tragedy I didn't cause. In the dorm, I traced the grain of the wooden ceiling with my eyes, my chest tight with anger and fear. Could I let him go? Could I free myself from the chains of a love that had only ever brought ruin? The karmic cycle, the elders said, offered a chance to balance the scales, but it demanded courage. Clinging to John was to invite the same fate. To release him was to step into the unknown. I thought of my family, alive in this life, their faces unmarred by the grief I'd known. My father, still a clerk, had greeted me that morning with a warm smile, his ledger open on the kitchen table. My mother, her hands steady, wove intricate patterns, her laughter a melody I'd forgotten. They were my anchor, proof that this life could be different. But John's shadow loomed. His charm and promises had once swayed me, a city girl dazzled by his ambition. Now, I saw the truth. His love was a transaction, his heart a ledger of debts and grudges. To stay bound to him was to risk my family's peace, to repeat a cycle of destruction. Rachel Moore slipped into the dorm, her silhouette sharp against the lantern's glow. "Lily, you're brooding again," she said, her voice a mix of worry and exasperation. A seamstress with a spirit as fierce as the summer sun, Rachel had been my confidant since we arrived in the village, two educated youths navigating a world of mud and millet. She sat beside me, her calloused hands clasping mine. "John left you in that river. He's not worth your tears." Her words, though blunt, carried love. I shook my head, the truth spilling out. "It's not just the river, Rachel. In another life, he took everything. My family, my hope. I can't let that happen again." Her eyes widened, but she didn't question the talk of another life. The village, steeped in tales of spirits and cycles, accepted such mysteries. "Then what will you do?" she asked. I closed my eyes, picturing Dany, who saved me. His slow speech, his gentle gaze, had stirred something in me, a spark of trust. He was no schemer, no destroyer. I I said, I need to let John go, my voice steady despite the ache. I need to choose a path that keeps my family safe, that keeps me whole. Rachel squeezed my hand, her silence a vow of support. As dawn broke, painting the rice fields gold, I stepped outside, the air crisp with possibility. The village stirred, its rhythms unchanged by my turmoil. Oxen plodded, children laughed, and the river flowed, a reminder of death and rebirth. John would marry Cindy, as he wished. I would not fight for a man who saw me as a burden. But the path ahead was uncertain, a blank scroll waiting for my mark. Dany's face flashed in my mind, his hands steady as he pulled me from the water. In that act, I saw a kindness John could never offer. Could I build a life with a man the village scorned? The question lingered, heavy as the morning mist. But for the first time I felt hope. A chance to rewrite my story, not in John's shadow, but in the light of my strength. The morning sun climbed over the rice fields, casting a golden haze across our rural Chinese village in the spring of 1978. The air buzzed with the clatter of hoes and the chatter of women at the communal well, but my mind was elsewhere, tethered to a decision that would reshape my life. I, Lily Adams, reborn with the weight of a past life's betrayals, stood at a crossroads. John Mitchell, my former fiancé, had chosen Cindy Green over me in the river, his betrayal echoing the ruin he'd wrought before. Yet the man who saved me, Dany, the village fool, offered a different path untainted by scheming or vengeance. As I walked the dirt path to the commune's sewing room, my heart thrummed with resolve. I would marry Dany, repaying his kindness with a vow that defied the village's scorn. The sewing room, a low brick building scented with thread and oil, was my sanctuary. There, my fiercest friend, Rachel Moore, bent over a treadle machine, her dark braids swinging as she stitched red fabric for my wedding dress. Rachel, a seamstress whose sharp wit matched her needle, had been my anchor since we arrived as educated youths, sent from the city to labor in the countryside. Her loyalty was a fire, unyielding even when I faltered. "Lily, you're late," she called, her voice teasing but her eyes sharp with concern. She'd heard the whispers, John and Cindy's brazen flaunting, the village's pity for me. I set my embroidery basket down, the weight of my choice settling like dust. "Rachel," I said, my voice steady, "I'm marrying Dany." The words hung in the air, bold and unyielding. Rachel's hands froze, the machine's hum fading. "Dany? The fool?" Her brow furrowed, her tone a mix of shock and disbelief. "Lily, John broke your heart, but this? You're educated, city-born. You could have Mike Carter, his father's a county official, or Eric Johnson, headed for university. Why a man who can barely string a sentence together?" Her words, though harsh, came from love, a plea to protect me from a choice the village would mock. I sat beside her, tracing the red silk under my fingers. In my past life, John's charm had blinded me. His promises were a trap that led to my family's ruin. My father's imprisonment, my mother's blindness, my lost child. They were scars that whispered caution. Dany, though, was different. His eyes, transparent and honest, held no guile when he pulled me from the river. His stammering voice, his gentle hands, spoke of a heart that acted without calculation. "He saved me, Rachel," I said softly. "Not for glory or gain, but because it was right. He's no schemer. He won't destroy me like John did." Rachel leaned back, her gaze searching mine. "You're serious," she said, her voice softening. "But the village, they'll tear you apart. Marrying a fool, it's like spitting on tradition." She wasn't wrong. In our town, where post-reform winds stirred dreams of wealth, marriage was a contract, a union of status and dowry. Their husbands' prospects judged women, their worth tied to land or connections. Dany, a laborer who'd wandered in after the 1975 flood, was a nobody, his slow speech a target for jeers. To choose him was to invite ridicule, to defy the commune's unwritten rules. I met her eyes, my resolve hardening. Let them talk. I've lived a life chained to John's whims, watching my family crumble. Dany's kindness is a shield, Rachel. He's not brilliant, but he's true. That's enough. My voice trembled, not with doubt, but with the weight of breaking free. I'd clung to John in my past life, hoping love could mend his cruelty. This time, I chose myself, my family's safety, and my peace. Marrying Dany wasn't just gratitude, it was a rebellion against a past that had nearly drowned me. Rachel's lips twitched, a reluctant smile breaking through. "You're stubborn as an ox, Lily Adams," she said, shaking her head. "Fine. I'll stitch this dress to make every woman in the village green with envy, but if that fool hurts you, I'll have his hide." Her threat was playful, but her hands moved with purpose, the needle flashing as she poured loyalty into every stitch. I laughed, the sound light in the heavy air. "Deal," I said, my heart lifting. Rachel's support was a bridge, connecting my past fears to a future I dared to imagine. Outside, the village pulsed with life. Oxen trudged through muddy fields, and children chased each other, their laughter countering the adults' gossip. At the well, Mrs. Lee, a sharp-tongued matron, whispered to her neighbors, "Lily Adams, marrying that simpleton, she's lost her senses." Their stares followed me as I passed, but I held my head high. I'd taught their children to read, hauled water for their elders. Their scorn couldn't touch the truth I carried. Dany's act of courage had given me a second chance, and I would honor it. I found Dany at the riverbank that evening, mending a fishing net. His broad hands moved slowly, deliberately, his face serene in the fading light. He said, "Miss Lily," his voice halting but warm, "You okay?" His unpolished yet genuine concern stirred something in me, a flicker of trust, fragile but growing. "I'm fine, Dany," I replied, sitting beside him, "and I want to thank you for saving me." He blushed, ducking his head. "Just did what's right," he mumbled. His simplicity was a balm, a stark contrast to John's calculated charm. As the river murmured, I made my vow silently. I would marry Dany, not out of pity or desperation, but as a step toward a life free of John's poison. The village might laugh, but I saw clarity in Dany's eyes, a promise of safety. My parents, alive and whole in this life, deserved a daughter unburdened by past mistakes. With Rachel's strength beside me, I felt ready to face the whispers, to carve a path where kindness, not ambition, reigned. The red silk of my wedding dress, folded in my basket, was no longer just fabric. It was a banner of my defiance, a symbol of a future I would write myself. The summer of 1978 draped our rural Chinese village in a haze of heat and possibility, where the rice fields shimmered like mirrors under the relentless sun. In this corner of post-reform China, the commune system creaked under the weight of new economic winds, whispering of private plots and market stalls. Yet, tradition held the village in an iron grip. Marriages were alliances, dowries a family's pride, and a woman's worth tied to the man she wed. Lily Adams, an educated youth reborn with memories of betrayal, had defied these norms by vowing to marry Dany, the village fool who saved me from the river. As I walked the dusty paths, my decision stirred whispers sharper than the sickles in the fields, testing my resolve and revealing the village's heart. I joined the women at the communal well each morning, their buckets clanging like gossip. Mrs. Lee, a matron with eyes like a hawk, leaned close to her neighbor. Lily Adams marrying that simpleton? Her city brains must have washed away in the river. Laced with scorn, her words were a blade, but I kept my chin high. I'd earned quiet respect teaching their children to read in the commune's makeshift school, my chalk-dusted hands a bridge to their trust. I hauled water for elders, my back aching but my spirit steady, knowing every act chipped away at their disdain. Yet the village judged harshly. Dany was no match for a woman of my learning, they said, his slow speech a mark of shame. The village itself was a tapestry of old and new. Oxen trudged through muddy fields, but gleaming with factory paint, bicycles hinted at prosperity. The commune's production team tallied work points, while whispers of reform sparked dreams of trading rice for cash. Marriage, though, remained a sacred pact. A bride's dowry, bolts of cloth, a sewing machine, perhaps a radio, signaled status. Whether land or county job, a groom's prospects secured a family's future. My choice of Dany, a laborer with no lineage, baffled them. "She could have had Mike Carter," Mrs. Lee muttered, his father's an official. Their pity stung, but I saw freedom in Dany's simplicity. No ambition to ruin, no heart to betray. Rachel Moore, my confidant and the village's finest seamstress, was my shield against the gossip. In the sewing room, where the hum of her treadle machine drowned out the world, she worked on my wedding dress, her needle flashing with defiance. "Let them talk," she said, her dark eyes blazing. "They'll choke on their words when you walk down that aisle." Rachel, who'd arrived with me as an educated youth, understood the village's pulse. Her dreams of opening a tailor's shop in the county fueled her fire. She'd rallied the women to donate thread, her charm turning skeptics into allies. "This dress," she declared, holding up the red silk, "will make you a queen, fool or no fool." Her faith bolstered mine, a reminder that love could outshine scorn. Dany, though, remained an enigma. He'd appeared after the 1975 flood, a quiet figure hauling stones for the commune, his broad hands steady, but his words halting. The villagers called him a fool, mocking his stammer, yet his eyes held a depth I couldn't name. I watched him barter fish for millet at the market, his smile disarming even the stingiest vendors. Who was he before the flood? The question gnawed at me. Mrs. Wang, the county's famed matchmaker, knew more than she let on. When I'd asked about Dany, her grin was sly. "He's a good man, Lily. Trust the heavens." Her cryptic words and her knack for pairing unlikely couples hinted at secrets. Had she seen something in Dany that I hadn't? My parents, alive and whole in this life, offered silent support. At our family's modest home, my father, a county clerk, polished his glasses, his ledger open. "You're sure about this boy?" he asked, his voice gentle. My mother, weaving a basket, nodded. "He saved her, dear. That's a start." Their trust, a stark contrast to their past life suffering, grounded me. In that other life, John's schemes had destroyed them, my father imprisoned, my mother blinded by grief. Now their pride in my strength was a beacon. I wouldn't risk their peace for a man like John, whose love was a ledger of debts. One evening I found Dany mending a fence near the commune barn, his faded shirt clinging to his frame. The setting sun cast him in gold, his slow movements deliberate, like a man carrying an unseen burden. "Miss Lily," he said, his voice soft. "You don't have to, for me." His humility, his fear of being a burden, pierced me. I knelt beside him, meeting his gaze. "Dany, you saved my life. I choose this, not out of debt, but because I see goodness in you." His eyes widened, a flicker of hope breaking through. "Goodness," he repeated, as if tasting the word. In that moment I felt a spark, a connection not of passion but of trust. The village's whispers grew louder as the group wedding neared, organized by the commune to celebrate the harvest. My choice was a scandal, a city girl spurning status for a fool. Yet, I taught my students with steady hands, shared rice with neighbors, and smiled through their stares. Rachel's dress, nearly complete, was a symbol of my defiance. Its red silk was a challenge to tradition. Dany's mystery, Mrs. Wang's hints, and my parents' faith wove a fragile hope. The river had spared me, the karmic cycle granting a second chance. As I sewed embroidery under the lantern's glow, I vowed to face the village's judgment, to build a life where kindness, not ambition, defined my worth. In the sultry haze of late summer 1978, our rural Chinese village thrummed with the rhythm of harvest preparations, the air thick with the scent of ripening millet and anticipation for the commune's group wedding. The red silk of my wedding dress, stitched with Rachel Moore's fierce devotion, lay folded in my dorm, symbolizing my vow to marry Dany, who saved me from the river. Yet the village's whispers, sharp as thorns, followed me, their judgment a weight for choosing a fool over status. I, Lily Adams, reborn with the scars of John Mitchell's betrayal, braced for a storm when John and Cindy Green, now openly a couple, appeared at my doorstep, their false apologies masking a cruel intent. The evening was still, the sky bruised with dusk, as I sat in the commune's sewing room, embroidering mandarin ducks onto a veil. Rachel, my confidant and the village's sharpest seamstress, hummed beside me, her needle flashing. The creak of the door broke our quiet, and Cindy stepped inside, her floral blouse pristine, her smile a polished blade. John followed, his broad shoulders filling the frame, his eyes avoiding mine. "Lily," Cindy said, her voice soft as honey, "we heard you're marrying that fool who saved you. We came to apologize. None of this would have happened if I'd been more careful in the river." Her words dripped with pity, but her gaze gleamed with triumph. Rachel's hands stilled, her glare cutting through the air. "Save your crocodile tears," she snapped, clutching her scissors. I raised a hand, calming her, and met Cindy's eyes. In my past life, John's choice to save me had doomed Cindy to a wretched marriage, her death fueling his vengeance against me. Now, reborn, I saw her for what she was, a manipulator cloaking ambition in innocence. No need for apologies, I said, my voice steady. I'm marrying Dany because I choose to. His heart doesn't plot or destroy. The words were a shield, forged from the pain of John's past cruelty. John shifted, his jaw tight, and finally spoke. Cindy's the only woman I'll ever marry, he said, his tone cold, his eyes flicking to me with disdain. You're throwing your life away, Lily, chasing a fool. His words stung, rekindling memories of his mockery in that other life, when he blamed me for Cindy's death and ruined my family. My father's imprisonment, my mother's blindness, my lost child, they flashed before me, a litany of loss. I gripped the embroidery, my knuckles white, and felt the old Lily, the one who'd begged for his love, stir. But she was gone, drowned in the river of this new life. Cindy stepped closer, her hand reaching for mine, a gesture as false as her tears. Lily, let's be fair, she said, her voice a purr. Love shouldn't be forced. Why not compete? We'll stay unmarried, spend time with John, and let him choose. Her suggestion, absurd in a village bound by monogamy, was a taunt, meant to humiliate me before the wedding. Rachel snorted, her scissors glinting. Compete? For that traitor? You're shameless, Cindy Green. I shook my head, a cold smile curving my lips. I'm not a prize to be won, Cindy. I've chosen Dany, and I'll stand by him. You two can keep your games. John's face darkened, his contempt bare. You're pathetic, Lily, clinging to a man who can't even think straight. His words were a lash, but they didn't break me. I stood, the veil slipping to the floor, and faced him. Pathetic? At least Dany doesn't scheme. He doesn't destroy families or mock the helpless. I'd rather marry a fool than a man whose love is poison. My voice trembled, not with fear, but with the weight of truth. In that moment, I saw the girl I'd been, desperate, broken, faded, replaced by a woman who chose her worth. Cindy's smile faltered, her eyes flashing with anger, but she quickly masked it with a sigh. Lily, you're upset. We want you to be happy. Her hypocrisy was a spark to Rachel's fuse. Get out, Rachel growled, brandishing her scissors like a sword. You came to gloat, not apologize. Leave before I make you. John grabbed Cindy's arm, pulling her toward the door, but not before she shot me a venomous glance. As they left, the room felt lighter, the air cleansed of their malice. Along with Rachel, I sank onto a stool, my hands trembling. The confrontation had stirred old wounds, John's betrayal, the family I'd lost, the love I'd once craved. I wept, not for him, but for the girl who'd believed in his promises and paid for her trust with everything. Rachel knelt beside me, her arms fierce around my shoulders. You were brilliant, Lily, she said, her voice soft. You showed them you're not their pawn. Her loyalty, a constant in both lives, anchored me. I wiped my tears, my resolve hardening. I'm done with John, I said. Dany's my future, Rachel. I'll face the village for him. Outside, the village settled into the night, lanterns flickering like stars. The commune's rules, rooted in tradition, branded my choice a scandal. An educated woman marrying a fool defied the logic of dowries and alliances. Yet, I'd taught their children, shared their burdens. My parents, safe in this life, believed in me. Dany's quiet kindness, his selfless act in the river, was a foundation I could build on. As I folded the veil, its embroidered ducks a promise of fidelity, I felt a spark of peace. The karmic cycle had brought me here, not to drown in John's shadow, but to rise in my light. The wedding loomed, and with Rachel's strength beside me, I was ready to face whatever came next. The autumn of 1978 painted our rural Chinese village in hues of gold and amber, the rice fields heavy with harvest, and the air alive with the buzz of the commune's upcoming group wedding. Tradition and change danced uneasily in this corner of post-reform China, where bicycles gleamed beside ox-drawn carts. I, Lily Adams, reborn with the scars of a past life's betrayals, had vowed to marry Dany, the man who saved me from the river, a choice that branded me a fool in the village's eyes. Yet as the wedding neared, a spectacle unfolded that turned scorn to envy, shrouding Dany in mystery and testing my faith in my chosen path. The morning began like any other, with women gathered at the communal well, their gossip as sharp as the October breeze. I hauled water, ignoring whispers about my foolish betrothal. Rachel Moore, my fierce seamstress friend, had finished my wedding dress, which was red silk with a defiant banner. At home, my parents, my father a county clerk, my mother a weaver, offered quiet pride, their trust a shield against judgment. In my past life, John Mitchell's schemes had destroyed them, Now their smiles fueled my resolve. But the village, bound by norms of dowry and status, saw my choice as a scandal. Lily could have had a county official's son, Mrs. Lee clucked, not some stammering laborer. Midday, a commotion erupted at the village entrance. Mrs. Wang, the county's famed matchmaker, rode in on a bicycle, her voice booming like a festival drum. "Make way for Lily Adams's betrothal gifts," she shouted, drawing a crowd. Behind her, 4 young men in crisp blue work uniforms carried treasures: a Shanghai brand sewing machine, its chrome gleaming, a Forever brand bicycle, sleek and new, a Shanghai wristwatch ticking with prestige, and a Pei brand radio, a rarity in our fields. Red silk adorned each item, double happiness characters blazing. The crowd gasped, their murmurs a tide of awe and disbelief. "Who'd have thought?" Mrs. Lee cried, slapping her thigh. "A fool with such wealth?" Hot from the county supply store, the gifts were the stuff of dreams, items that signaled a groom's worth in a village where dowries measured love. I stood frozen, my water bucket forgotten, as villagers swarmed the display. Bachelors rubbed their hands, envious. "If I'd jumped in the river," one muttered, "maybe I'd have those." Rachel, at my side, squeezed my arm, her eyes wide. "Lily, this is no fool's doing. What's going on?" Her question echoed mine. Dany, a laborer who bartered fish for millet, couldn't afford such splendor. Cindy Green pushed through the crowd, John Mitchell at her side, their faces a study in contrast. Cindy's smile was syrupy, but her eyes glinted with jealousy. "Lily," she said, loud enough for all to hear, "such a grand show. But children should honor their parents' struggles. Draining your family's savings for a fool's wedding, how will you repay it?" Her words, cloaked in concern, were venom, implying I'd squandered my parents' wealth to save face. John smirked, his arms crossed, his silence a taunt. The crowd's mood shifted, whispers turning skeptical. "City girls," someone muttered, "always showing off." I clenched my fists, the sting of Cindy's barb sharp. In my past life, John's mockery had broken me, his schemes costing my family everything. Now I faced a new trial, not just their scorn, but the mystery of these gifts. My parents, frugal and honest, hadn't funded this. Dany, with his patched clothes, couldn't have. I met Cindy's gaze, my voice calm but firm. "These gifts aren't my family's burden, Cindy. My choice is my own, and I stand by it." The words were a lifeline, anchoring me against doubt. Rachel snorted, her glare daring Cindy to push further. Mrs. Wang, her grin wide as the river, stepped forward, her presence commanding. "Enough chatter," she barked, directing the men to carry the gifts to my yard. The crowd parted, their eyes trailing the sewing machine's shine. I pulled Mrs. Wang aside, my voice low. "Auntie, where did these come from? Dany's a laborer. This makes no sense." Her eyes twinkled, her reply cryptic. "The heavens have plans, Lily. Trust your heart." Her words, like her matchmaking, hinted at secrets. Had she orchestrated this, or was Dany more than he seemed? The village's perception shifted as the gifts were set in my yard. Envy replaced pity, and curiosity drowned out scorn. "Maybe Lily knows something we don't," a woman whispered. I felt their stares, not as judgment, but as a challenge to prove my choice. Inside, doubt gnawed. Could I trust Dany, this man of mysteries? Yet his face flashed in my mind, his gentle gaze when he'd saved me, his hands steady without demand. I'd trusted John's charm and paid dearly in that other life. Now I chose faith in kindness, in the karmic cycle that had spared me. Rachel stayed as dusk fell, helping me polish the bicycle's frame. "These gifts," she said, her voice soft, "they're a sign, Lily. Dany's no ordinary man." Her faith, woven into every stitch of my dress, steadied me. Visiting that evening, my parents marveled at the radio, their pride unspoken but clear. "You've chosen well," my mother said, her hand on mine. Their trust, a contrast to their past life ruin, was my strength. The wedding loomed, a stage for the village's verdict. I felt a spark of hope as I gazed at the gifts, their silk gleaming under the lantern. The river had given me Dany, and the heavens, through Mrs. Wang's sly grin, seemed to promise more. The night before the commune's group wedding in October 1978 cloaked our rural Chinese village in a quiet as deep as the river that had reshaped my life. Lanterns flickered like fireflies, casting shadows on the mud brick walls of my dorm, where the scent of red silk and anticipation hung heavy. I, Lily Adams, reborn with memories of John Mitchell's betrayal, stood on the cusp of a new beginning. My vow to marry Dany, who saved me, had sparked envy with lavish betrothal gifts, turning village scorn to curiosity. Yet, as I sewed the final stitches into my wedding veil, a familiar silhouette darkened my window. John, my past life's destroyer, come to unravel my resolve. The air was cool, the village asleep save for the distant croak of frogs. I sat cross-legged on my cot, the veil's embroidered mandarin ducks glowing under the lantern's light. Rachel Moore, my fierce seamstress friend, had left hours ago, her parting words a vow to make my wedding day shine. My parents, safe in this life, had kissed my forehead that evening, their pride a balm against the village's judgment. In my past life, John's schemes had stolen them, my father imprisoned, my mother blinded by grief, my unborn child lost. Their trust fueled my choice of Dany, whose kindness promised a future untainted by deceit. A soft tap at the window broke my reverie. "Lily," John's voice rasped, low and urgent, "will you marry that fool?" His silhouette, stretched long by moonlight, trembled with a tension I knew too well. I froze, the needle pricking my finger, a bead of blood staining the silk. In that other life, his words had cut deeper, blaming me for Cindy Green's death, mocking my pain as he ruined my family. Reborn, I'd vowed to escape his shadow, but his presence now stirred anger and fear. I set the veil aside, my heart pounding, and approached the window. "What do you want, John?" I asked, my voice cold as the river's depths. His face, half lit, was gaunt, his eyes shimmering with desperation. "Please don't do this, Lily," he pleaded, his breath sharp with liquor. "I saved Cindy that day to spare her a ruined life, but I never meant to hurt you. If I hadn't chosen her, she'd have ended up with that thug again." His words, a twisted confession, echoed his past life guilt when Cindy's suicide had turned him cruel. Yet they rang hollow, a plea not for love but for control. I flung open the window, the night air sharp against my skin. "You chose Cindy, John," I said, my gaze unflinching. "You got what you wanted. Why are you here?" He leaned closer, his voice softening, a dangerous echo of the charm that once swayed me. "Marrying that fool will ruin you, Lily. Please wait for me. Once I've settled things with Cindy, I won't turn my back on you." His promise was a trap, a shadow of the vows that had bound me to ruin before. My hands clenched, memories surging. My father's slumped figure, my mother's sightless eyes, the child I'd never hold. "You destroyed me once," I said, my voice trembling with fury. "You framed my father, broke my mother, and took everything. You don't get to decide my life now." His face crumpled, confusion warring with desperation. "Lily, we were young together," he stammered. "I always kept a place for you in my heart. Don't act out of spite. Life with me would be better than with a fool." His words, a plea wrapped in arrogance, ignited a fire in me. I saw the girl I'd been, desperate for his love, blind to his poison, fade into the night. I stepped back, my hands steady. "You're right, John. I'm choosing better. Danny's kindness is worth more than your promises. Even if he's a fool, he's 1,000 times the man you'll ever be." My voice was a blade, severing the thread of our past. His eyes widened, his breath hitching, but I felt no pity. In that moment I was free, the karmic cycle that had reborn me granting not just a second chance but the strength to claim it. "Go back to Cindy," I said, slamming the window shut. "This is my life now." John's silhouette lingered, his footsteps fading into the dark. I sank onto my cot, the veil in my lap, my heart racing but clear. Tears came, not for him, but for the years I'd lost to his shadow, for the Lily who'd believed love could mend a broken man. Wiping them away, I felt a weight lift, the ghosts of my past life quieting. Danny's face rose in my mind, his gentle gaze, his hands pulling me from the river. He was no destroyer, no schemer. My choice, born of gratitude and trust, was a rebellion against John's legacy, a step toward a future I could shape. Outside, the village slept, its dowry traditions and status irrelevant to my newfound peace. Rachel's dress, my parents' trust, the mysterious gifts, they were anchors in a storm John could no longer stir. The wedding dawn approached, my red silk a symbol of defiance and hope. In my past life, I drowned in his betrayal. Now I stood on the riverbank, ready to walk forward. The lantern flickered, casting light on the Vale's ducks, a promise of fidelity not to John, but to myself. As I snipped the final thread, I knew the karmic cycle had led me to a life where love was not a debt, but a gift freely given. The dawn of the commune's group wedding in October 1978 broke over our rural Chinese village like a promise, the sky ablaze with pink and gold. Heavy with harvest, the rice fields mirrored the anticipation thrumming through the air as families prepared for the ceremony that would bind couples under the commune's banner. I, Lily Adams, reborn with the weight of past betrayals, stood in my dorm, the red silk wedding dress Rachel Moore had sewn hugging my frame. My vow to marry Dany, who saved me from the river, had weathered scorn and John Mitchell's desperate plea. Yet, as I pinned my veil, a revelation awaited that would rewrite my story and silence the village's doubts. The night before, I'd severed the last thread of my past, rejecting John's plea to reclaim me. His betrayal in that other life, destroying my family, mocking my pain, had no hold now. My parents, alive and proud in this life, had embraced me that morning, my father's steady hand on my shoulder, my mother's woven shawl a gift of love. Rachel, my fierce seamstress friend, had vowed to make this day shine, her loyalty a fire that warmed me. The lavish betrothal gifts, a sewing machine, bicycle, wristwatch, and radio, had sparked envy, hinting at Dany's hidden depths. Mrs. Wang, the matchmaker, had only winked, her cryptic words fueling my curiosity. As I adjusted my veil, Rachel burst through the door, her face flushed with excitement. "Lily, you won't believe this!" she cried, thrusting a crumpled poster into my hands. The ink was fresh, and the headline was bold, Battle Hero, Zachary Wayne. Below, a faded photo showed a young officer in a crisp military uniform, his unmistakable features, Dany's honest eyes and strong jaw. My breath caught, the paper trembling in my fingers. "It's him," Rachel said, her voice shaking. "Dany's no fool, he's a hero." The words struck like lightning, reshaping everything I thought I knew. The poster detailed Zachary Wayne's story. In 1975, during a catastrophic flood, he'd been a soldier, saving 3 children from a collapsing supply depot. A beam struck his head, stealing his memory and speech, leaving him a shadow of himself. He'd wandered to our village, known only as Dany, his past buried until the shock of saving me in the river stirred his mind awake. The commune had verified his identity, and the poster was a tribute to his return. I stared at the photo, my heart soaring. The man I'd chosen for his kindness was a hero, courage etched in medals I'd never seen. Rachel pulled me to the window, where a crowd gathered at the village square. Zachary, Dany no longer stood at its center, his faded army uniform adorned with gleaming medals, his posture proud yet humble. Villagers swarmed, their jeers replaced by awe. "That's Zachary Wayne," Mrs. Lee gasped, her voice reverent. "Lily's marrying a national hero!" The shift was seismic, scorn turning to admiration. Mrs. Wang, her grin triumphant, directed the crowd like a conductor. "Told you the heavens had plans," she called, winking at me. Her matchmaking, it seemed, had seen what I hadn't. I stepped outside, my veil trailing, and met Zachary's gaze. The stammer was gone, his voice soft but clear. "Lily," he said, "when I saved you in the river, something woke in me, like a long dream ending." His words, warm as the dawn, carried a truth that bound us. The crowd parted as I approached, their chatter a hum of praise. "Lily Adams hit the jackpot," a bachelor muttered, envious. Dumped by John the accountant, landed a hero. I ignored them, my eyes locked on Zachary. His medals gleamed, but his steady hand, offered without demand, anchored me. In my past life, I'd trusted John's charm, paying with my family's ruin, my father's imprisonment, my mother's blindness, my lost child. Now the karmic cycle had led me to Zachary, whose heroism mirrored his quiet act in the river. I took his hand. Its warmth was a promise. "You're no fool," I said, my voice thick with joy. "You never were." He smiled, a flicker of his old humility. "Just a man who saw a woman worth saving," he replied. The crowd erupted, their cheers a tide that drowned out years of doubt. At my side, Rachel whispered, "I knew you'd prove them wrong." Her loyalty, woven into my dress, had carried me here. My parents, watching from the crowd, beamed, their pride a contrast to their past life suffering. Mrs. Wang's sly grin hinted at her role. Had she known Zachary's truth, guiding us together? The village, once a crucible of judgment, now celebrated me, their whispers of fool's bride forgotten. Yet this triumph wasn't for them. It was for the lily who'd risen from betrayal, chosen kindness over ambition, trust over fear. As we walked toward the wedding stage, the gifts gleaming in my yard, I felt the river's echo, not as a threat, but as a cradle of rebirth. Zachary's past, forged in sacrifice, mirrored my own, a second chance to build anew. The veil lifted in the breeze, ducks a vow of fidelity to a man whose heart matched his courage. The wedding awaited, but with Zachary's hand in mine, this moment was victory enough. The karmic cycle had spared me, not for vengeance, but for this, a hero who saw me, and a future where love was no longer a debt, but a gift. The morning of the commune's group wedding in October 1978 dawned crisp and golden, bathing our rural Chinese village in a light that felt like absolution. The stone bridge at the village entrance, where the river had nearly claimed me, stood adorned with red banners, a gateway to new beginnings. I, Lily Adams, reborn with the scars of John Mitchell's past life betrayal, rode behind Zachary Wayne, once known as Dany, now revealed as a decorated war hero, on a gleaming Forever brand bicycle, my red silk wedding dress a vibrant declaration. Once scornful of my choice, the village now cheered, their awe sparked by Zachary's medals and the lavish betrothal gifts. Yet, as we approached the bridge, John's desperate stand threatened to unravel my triumph. The wedding procession was a spectacle, with gongs clanging and children tossing rice, a tradition rooted in the commune's blend of old customs and post-reform pride. My fierce seamstress friend Rachel Moore led the women, her grin wide as she waved a red scarf. My parents, their faces bright with pride, stood among the crowd, a stark contrast to their past life ruin. My father imprisoned, my mother blinded by grief. Mrs. Wang, the matchmaker who'd hinted at Zachary's truth, rode ahead, her voice booming. Lily Adams and Zachary Wayne, a match blessed by the heavens. The village square where the ceremony would seal our vows buzzed with anticipation. Zachary, in his faded army uniform, its medals gleaming, pedaled steadily, his broad back a shield against the world. His reveal as a hero, saving children in the 1975 flood, his memory restored by my rescue, had silenced doubters. I wrapped my arms around his waist, my veil fluttering, feeling the warmth of a man whose courage matched his kindness. I'd trusted John's charm, losing everything in my past life. Now the karmic cycle had led me to Zachary, and the river's echo was no longer lost, but redemption. As we neared the bridge, a figure stumbled into our path. John Mitchell, his face pale, his eyes wild with desperation. The crowd hushed, gongs faltering. "Lily," he shouted, his voice cracking, "you can't marry him." His suit, rumpled and stained, betrayed nights of drinking, a shadow of the man who'd once charmed me. Cindy Green, clinging to his arm, looked frantic, her floral dress askew. The village froze, their eyes darting between us, sensing a scandal. Rachel's scarf dropped, her glare sharp enough to cut stone. Zachary slowed the bicycle, his voice calm but firm. "Step aside, Accountant Mitchell. Don't delay our ceremony." John ignored him, his gaze locked on me, tears welling. "Lily, there's a misunderstanding," he pleaded, stepping closer. "You can't marry this fool. We belong together." His words, a twisted echo of his midnight plea, stirred memories of his past life cruelty, framing my father, mocking my pain, blaming me for Cindy's death. My heart, once broken by his promises, now beat steadily, anchored by Zachary's presence. I met John's eyes, my veil lifting in the breeze. "I said you chose Cindy, John," my voice clear, carrying over the crowd. "You got your wish." "I prefer Zachary, a man who values me, not destroys me." The words were a blade, honed by years of pain. John staggered, his lips trembling. "Lily, please," he gasped, reaching for my arm. "Have you forgotten everything we shared?" His desperation was a public unraveling, a man clinging to a past that no longer existed. Zachary dismounted, stepping between us, his medals glinting. "You heard her," he said, his tone unyielding. "Lily doesn't want you." His calm authority, forged in battle, silenced John's plea. The crowd murmured, some pitying, others scornful. Rachel pushed forward, her voice sharp. "Get lost, John. You've humiliated yourself enough." Mrs. Wang, her grin sly, added, "Accountant Mitchell, don't tarnish Lily's day." Their support, woven into my journey, emboldened me. John lunged as if to grab me, but village men, led by a burly farmer, restrained him, their hands firm. "Lily!" he roared, his voice breaking. "How can you marry someone else?" I didn't flinch, my gaze unwavering. "You ruined my family once, John. You don't get to ruin my future." The crowd gasped, the weight of my words sinking in. Cindy, her face crumpling, tugged at John, but he shook her off, his eyes locked on me, a man drowning in regret. I tightened my grip on Zachary's waist, his warmth grounding me. "Let's go," I whispered. He nodded, pedaling past John, the bridge a threshold between past and future. The crowd's cheers swelled, drowning out John's fading cries. Rachel waved her scarf, my parents clapped, and Mrs. Wang's laughter rang out. The village, once my judge, now celebrated my choice, but their approval was secondary. This moment was my triumph over the Lily who'd begged for John's love, a vow to the woman I'd become. The gongs resumed as we reached the square, and the ceremony was moments away. I glanced back once, seeing John slump, Cindy dragging him away. In my past life, his betrayal had chained me. Now I was free. Zachary's hand brushed mine, a silent promise. The river, the karmic cycle had brought us here, not to repeat pain, but to forge a bond rooted in trust. Embroidered with ducks, my veil was no longer just defiance, but a pledge to a hero who saw my worth. The wedding stage loomed, and with Zachary beside me, I stepped forward, the weight of my past falling away like leaves in the autumn wind. The evening of our wedding in October 1978 settled over our rural Chinese village like a soft exhale, the commune's festivities fading into a quiet glow of lanterns and starlight. The stone bridge, where John Mitchell's desperate plea had crumbled hours before, stood silent, a marker of my final break from a past life's pain. I, Lily Adams, reborn through a karmic cycle, sat beside Zachary Wayne, once the village's fool, now a celebrated war hero, under an ancient locust tree at the village's edge. Our marriage certificate, stamped with a red seal, rested between us, a testament to a bond forged not in obligation, but in mutual trust. As the world stilled, our shared truths wove a new beginning. The wedding had been a triumph. My fierce seamstress friend, Rachel Moore, had danced with the women, her red scarf a banner of victory. My parents, their faces alight with pride, had embraced me, their joy a stark contrast to their past life ruin, my father's imprisonment, my mother's blindness, my lost child. Mrs. Wang, the matchmaker who'd guided us, had beamed, her winks hinting at her role in unveiling Zachary's identity. Once scornful of my choice, the village had cheered, awed by Zachary's medals and the lavish betrothal gifts. John's public defeat at the bridge, his cries drowned by gongs, had sealed my freedom from his shadow. Now the air was cool under the locust tree, scented with earth and sap. Zachary's uniform, its medals dim in the dusk, clung to his broad frame, his presence steady as the river that had bound us. His past, saving children in the 1975 flood, his memory shattered by a beam, restored by my rescue, had reshaped him from Dany to a hero. I hesitated, the certificate's weight heavy in my hands. In my past life, I'd trusted John, losing everything. Could I bear my truth to Zachary, confessing my initial choice of him as an escape from John's poison? "Zachary," I began, my voice soft, "I need to tell you something." His eyes, clear and kind, met mine, inviting trust. In another life, John was my fiancé. He saved me from the river, but his guilt over Cindy's death turned him cruel. He framed my father, broke my mother, and took my child. The words spilled, raw and jagged, each memory a wound. When I was reborn, I chose you to escape him, to protect my family. I didn't know you then, not honestly. My hands trembled, fearing his judgment, but his gaze held no reproach. Zachary took my hand, his palm warm and calloused. "Lily," he said, his voice steady, "I saw you in the river, risking yourself for a child. Later, feverish, you cried for your father to run, carrying a pain I couldn't name. I thought, this woman's heart is deep, worth any life, even a fool's." He paused, his eyes distant. "I lost my family in the war, parents, a sister, gone in a bombing. The army was my home until the flood took my memory. I was half a man when I came here, but you gave me back myself." His words, rooted in sacrifice, pierced me. I'd chosen him for safety, but he'd chosen me for my courage, my kindness, teaching village children, hauling water for elders. You didn't know me either, I said, a tear falling. Why marry me? He smiled, pointing to swallows nesting in the tree. Birds don't ask why they choose a branch. Some connections need no reason. His simplicity, once mocked, was wisdom, a soldier's faith in instinct. I leaned against him, the certificate crinkling, and felt a truth settle. Our bond, born in the river, was sincere. The village stirred faintly, gossip drifting on the breeze. Rachel, visiting earlier, had whispered of John and Cindy's chaos, shattered wedding bowls, shouted fights. Cindy's jealous, she'd said, and John's drowning in regret. Their unraveling, a shadow of my past life's pain, felt distant now. My parents, safe at home, had sent rice cakes. Their love was a quiet strength. Mrs. Wang's matchmaking, I realized, had seen Zachary's heart, guiding us beyond my fears. The village, once my judge, faded into the night, its opinions irrelevant to this moment. I smoothed Zachary's uniform, my fingers tracing a medal. From now on, I said, each word clear, you're the only one in my heart. He covered my hand with his warmth grounding me. And you're mine, Lily, he replied, his voice a vow. A locust leaf fell, landing on our joined hands, a symbol of peace. In my past life, I'd sought love in John's ambition, losing all. The karmic cycle led me to Zachary, whose courage and kindness mirrored my resilience. Once a threat, the river was now a cradle, its flow carrying away old wounds. As twilight deepened, a star sparked on the horizon. The certificate, married by mutual consent, was more than paper. It was a bridge from my past to a future we'd build together. Rachel's dress, my parents' trust, and the village's cheers were threads in a tapestry Zachary and I wove. The locust tree's branches swayed, whispering of seasons to come. I rested against him, his heartbeat steady, and knew this marriage was not an escape but a home, a place where trust, not fear, defined us. The night stretched on, and with it, a quiet certainty. The heavens had spared me for this. The late autumn of 1978 wrapped our rural Chinese village in a chill that mirrored the fading warmth of old grudges. The rice fields, now stubble under a gray sky, bore witness to the harvest's end and the quiet triumph of my new life. I, Lily Adams, reborn through a karmic cycle, stood in my courtyard, hanging laundry beside Zachary Wayne, my husband, and a war hero once mistaken for a fool. Our wedding, sealed under the locust tree's shade, had silenced the village's scorn, John Mitchell's desperate pleas drowned by our vows. Yet, as the commune settled into winter's rhythm, Cindy Green's jealousy and John's unraveling sparked a final reckoning, delivering justice where once there was only pain. The village, caught in the post-reform pulse 1978, balanced tradition with change. Communal work points gave way to whispers of private trade, but gossip remained the currency of the square. My fierce seamstress friend Rachel Moore brought news as she helped peg clothes. Cindy's lost it, she said, her eyes glinting. She's screaming at John, smashing their wedding gifts. He's drinking himself to ruin. Their chaos, a stark contrast to my past life's destruction, my father's imprisonment, my mother's blindness, my lost child, felt like a distant storm. Zachary, polishing his bicycle, smiled softly. Let them fade, Lily. We've got our path. My parents, alive and thriving in this life, had joined our wedding, their pride a balm. That morning, my father, a county clerk, had shared tea, his ledger neat, while my mother wove baskets, her hands steady. You've made us proud, she'd said, her eyes clear, unlike the grief that blinded her before. Their safety, preserved by my choice to reject John, anchored me. The village, once my judge, now nodded respectfully, their fool's bride taunts forgotten, after Zachary's reveal as a hero who saved children in the 1975 flood. Mrs. Wang, the matchmaker, had foreseen this, her sly guidance a thread in our story. Cindy's envy, though, burned hotter than the harvest fires. Spurned by John's obsession with me, she plotted revenge, enlisting Dogface Wayne, her past-life husband, a thug who'd drifted back to the village. Rachel, ever vigilant, overheard their whispers by the grain yard, warning me of a scheme to ambush Zachary during a village movie night. Cindy wants him gone, she said, her voice low. She blames you for John's ruin. I nodded, my resolve steel. In my past life, I'd been a victim. Now, I'd outwit her. Zachary, calm but commanding, rallied the commune militia. We'll catch them, he said, his soldier's instinct sharp. As the loudspeaker blared a film trailer that evening, I played bait, slipping toward the outhouse near the grain barn. Dogface Wayne and a crony lunged from the shadows, their breath sour with liquor. Come with us, city girl, Wayne slurred, grabbing my arm. I feigned fear, my heart steady, knowing Zachary was near. A flashlight beam sliced the dark, and Zachary, with 3 militiamen, charged in, rifles gleaming. Drop her, he barked. Wayne crumpled, the thug fleeing only to be tackled. The village awoke to the commotion, lanterns bobbing as news spread. Cindy's plot had failed. By dawn, Cindy faced the consequences. Wayne's family, furious, stormed her home, blaming her for his arrest. You witch! His mother wailed, hurling insults as villagers watched, some cracking sunflower seeds. Cindy pleaded with John, her hair wild and her blouse torn, but he turned away, his face gray with shame. The commune police, alerted by Zachary, took her for questioning. Later I learned she was sentenced to labor reform for inciting crime, her dreams of status shattered. John, his accounting errors exposed by drink, was demoted to a remote forest station, and his charm was reduced to ashes. I stood in the courtyard, Zachary's woven straw fan cooling me as I hung sheets. The village buzzed, but their gossip, once a blade, was now a distant hum. Rachel, joining us, laughed. Cindy thought she could break you. Look at her now. Her loyalty stitched into my dress had carried me through. Mrs. Wang, passing by, winked. Knew you'd outshine them, Lily. Her foresight, pairing me with Zachary, was a gift. My parents, visiting that evening, shared rice wine, their laughter a melody of peace, their past life suffering a fading echo. Zachary's hand brushed mine, his metals glinting in the sun. You were brave, he said, his voice warm. I smiled, the river's memory no longer pain, but purpose. In my past life, John's betrayal had chained me. Now, Cindy's scheme and his downfall freed me. The karmic cycle had balanced the scales, not through vengeance, but through love. A hero who saw my worth, a family restored, a village won over. As our shadows merged in the courtyard, the laundry flapping like flags, I knew this was redemption. A life where trust, not fear, bloomed in the golden stubble of the fields. Winter's first breath swept through our rural Chinese village in early 1979, dusting the rice fields with frost and wrapping the air in a quiet promise. The commune, alive with the hum of post-reform dreams, had settled into a rhythm of change, where bicycles outnumbered ox carts and whispers of markets echoed in the square. I, Lily Adams, reborn through a karmic cycle, stood in the courtyard of our new county home, a pear tree sapling at its center, its bare branches reaching for spring. Beside me, Zachary Wayne, my husband and a war hero once mistaken for a fool, held a reassignment order, its red seal gleaming. Our marriage, forged in the river's crucible, had weathered scorn and betrayal, leading us to a life where love, not vengeance, bloomed. The village, once a crucible of judgment, had become a memory. John Mitchell and Cindy Green, whose schemes had haunted my past life, were shadows now. John demoted to a remote forest station, his accounting errors drowning him in drink. Cindy sentenced to labor reform, her envy a chain that bound her. Their downfall, a mirror of the ruin John inflicted on my family before, my father's imprisonment, my mother's blindness, my lost child, felt like justice served by the heavens. My parents, alive and thriving in this life, had sent a woven blanket for our new home, their pride a constant light. Rachel Moore, my fierce seamstress friend, had visited, her laughter promising trips to see us. Mrs. Wang, the matchmaker who'd seen Zachary's truth, had boasted, I knew you'd outshine them all. Our new home, a modest brick house in the county seat, was a gift from the organization. Zachary, appointed Deputy Director of Military Affairs, wore his uniform with quiet pride, its medals a testament to his 1975 flood heroics. I, assigned as a technician at the textile factory, found purpose in the whir of looms, my hands steady as I wove patterns that echoed my mother's skill. The courtyard, small but ours, held the pear tree Zachary planted. He said it'll bloom next spring, his voice warm, and I'll hang a swing for you. His simple yet profound words were a vow of seasons to come, a life built on trust. We rode bicycles to the river each weekend, not the village's churning waters, but a gentler stream nearby. Zachary fished, his line dancing in the current, while I read, my books a bridge to the education I'd once lost. Passers-by, county folk, greeted us respectfully. Deputy Director Xiao, Technician Shu, they'd say, nodding to our new names, our new roles. The river, once a symbol of loss, now sparkled with possibility, its flow a reminder of the karmic cycle that had spared me. In my past life, John's betrayal had drowned my dreams. Now, Zachary's love lifted them, a tide that carried me forward. As we sat in our courtyard that evening, the pear tree's silhouette swayed under the moonlight. Zachary's arm encircled me, his heartbeat steady against my cheek. I traced the reassignment order, and it's a seal and a mark of our shared future. I never thought I'd find this, I said, my voice soft. A life where I'm not running from pain. He smiled, his hand covering mine. You gave me back my memory, Lily. I'd dive into any river for you. His words, rooted in his loss, family taken by war, identity stolen by injury, mirrored my healing. We'd both been broken, yet together we were whole. Rachel's letters arrived weekly, filled with village gossip. Mrs. Wang's planning another wedding, she wrote, but none match yours. Now open in the county, her shop thrived, her scissors snipping dreams into reality. My parents, who visited often, brought rice cakes, and their laughter was a melody of peace. Once tainted by John's schemes, my father's ledger was now a record of pride. My mother's baskets, sold at market, were her legacy reborn. The village, sending congratulations, called us a perfect match, their old taunts of fool's bride a distant echo. As night deepened, the stars multiplied, each a spark of hope. I thought of the river that day, the icy grip, John's choice, Zachary's hands pulling me to safety. The karmic cycle, whispered in village temples, had not been about revenge, but redemption. John's betrayal, Cindy's envy, had faded like frost under dawn. My restored family was my heart's anchor. Zachary, my hero, is its home. The pear tree, budding in the cold, promised blooms, a swing, a future. I rested in Zachary's arms, his scent of soap and earth grounding me, and knew this was my second chance, not to drown in pain, but to live in love. The village's rhythm, carried on the wind, was a faint hum, oxen plodding, children laughing, the river flowing. Our home, small but ours, was a sanctuary. Each night, as I listened to Zachary's heartbeat, I saw the girl I'd been, broken by John, chained by fear, fade into a dream. The woman I was now, Technician Shu, wife of a hero, stood tall. The pear tree's buds, swaying in the moonlight, were a vow of spring, of seasons we'd share. The river, the cycle, the heavens had led me here, to a man who dove into freezing waters, to a life where every dawn was a new beginning.